The story begins on Christmas Eve in 2022. Dan, a former sergeant and current teacher, is rejected from his dream job at a lab. During a family soccer match viewing, a glowing cloud appears on the field, and soldiers led by Lieutenant Hart emerge, claiming they are from the year 2051. They explain that an alien species known as the White Spikes have invaded Earth, wiping out most of humanity. They are recruiting people to travel to the future to help fight the war. Over the months, countries send soldiers, but the future keeps asking for more people. When trained soldiers run out, the government starts drafting civilians, causing riots. Dan, despite being a teacher, is drafted due to his military background. He is informed that he will be dead in 7 years, and a device is attached to his arm to track him in the future. After 7 days of touring, the device will bring him back. Dan's wife, Emmy, suggests they run away, but Dan decides to seek help from his estranged father, James. However, James believes Dan is a government spy, leading to an argument and Dan leaving with the device still attached. Dan undergoes basic training and befriends a scientist named Charlie and a fighter named Dorian. They are given an explanation of the time travel technology, likening it to two rafts on a moving river, with 2022 and 2051 being the fixed points. The trainees are suddenly sent to the future before their training is complete. They are supposed to go to Miami Beach, but due to a mistake, they appear in the sky above the city and fall onto a building, causing many casualties. The survivors find Miami in ruins and are informed that the city has been overrun by White Spikes. Their mission is to rescue a research team trapped inside a laboratory. Dan, with his military experience, is put in charge of the team. They find the lab and discover a dead alien, but the research team is also dead, part of an alien trap. They retrieve the research and escape the lab, but encounter the White Spikes. They discover that the aliens' weak spots are the neck and belly. After a series of battles and losses, Dan and Charlie wake up in a forward operating base in the Dominican Republic. They find Dorian, who informs them that the rest of the team is dead. Dan is then requested to see the colonel, who turns out to be an older version of his daughter, Murray. Murray, now a scientist and the lead researcher in the Air Force, explains that she needs Dan's help to capture a female White Spike to develop a stronger toxin to kill the aliens. The team captures a female White Spike, but the male White Spikes attack to save her. Dan and Murray manage to escape with the female White Spike, who is taken to a fortified offshore oil platform. Dan and Murray work together to analyze the alien's DNA and try to discover how she stops the toxin from killing her. Murray reveals that once she finds a way to make a stronger toxin, Dan needs to take it back to the past to mass produce it and get it ready for when the aliens arrive. Just as they finish creating a toxin with a 100% match for a female White Spike, the alien wakes up and calls for her protectors. As the aliens attack the platform, Murray gives Dan the toxin and urges him to take it back to the past to save everyone. The time machine activates, taking Dan, Dorian, Charlie, and the others back to the past. The toxin is safe in Dan's back in the past. Dan shares the news of the successful creation of the toxin and the need to mass produce it. However, they learn that the time machine isn't working anymore, likely because the aliens on the oil platform have destroyed the other end of it. They can't go back ever again, meaning it's all over. Despite this, Dan is determined to find a solution. With Emmy's help, Dan theorizes that the aliens attack Russia in 2048, but they might have arrived before that and remained unnoticed because they were in the middle of a frozen nowhere in Russia. They decide to start looking at years before 2048. Dan visits Dorian and convinces him that it's not over yet. They take Dorian's trophy claw to the lab Charlie works at, where Charlie confirms that there's sediment on the claw that looks like volcanic ash from either China or Korea. Dan's student Martin explains that there was a huge volcanic eruption in Asia thousands of years ago. If the ash was blown by the wind, it could have gotten caught in Russian waters, which eventually became ice. This means the creatures have always been here on Earth, frozen under hundreds of layers of ice. The reason why they wake up in 2048 is that's when climate change finally finishes melting all the polar ice. Dan, Dorian, and Charlie decide to take matters into their own hands and seek help from Dan's father James, who has been living off the grid for years and has his own plane. They travel to Russia and discover a weird magnetic field surrounding an area. Using explosives, they open a hole in the ground and enter an ancient cavern, where they find the frozen spaceship. They realize that the spaceship is a crash site and the aliens never intended Earth to be their destination. The white spikes were bioengineered creatures used by the pilot's alien race as weapons to colonize other planets. The team begins injecting the pods with the toxin, but their cries wake up the aliens that haven't been injected yet, causing them to break their pods and attack. The team shoots as many as they can, but some of them manage to escape. Dorian decides to stay behind to activate the bomb once everyone is out. The explosion kills Dorian and all the creatures, but James explains he saw an alien with a red belly escape. Dan and James split up to go after the female alien. When the Queen attacks again, she pushes them to separate them, then shoots a spike at Dan before going after him. Dan uses that same spike to stab her mouth and James hits her with an axe, leaving her blind. The Queen begins thrashing around in desperation and Dan takes the chance to inject the toxin into her leg. However, the Queen removes that leg so the toxin can't spread in her body. When the Queen tries to go after Dan, he gets a grenade ready to bring her down with him. But at that moment, James raises his wounded hand to make the alien smell his blood and go after him instead. Dan refuses to lose his father after they reunited, so he jumps on the Queen and slices her neck with Dorian's claw. After hitting her a few more times, he takes out the last vial of toxin and inserts it in her mouth, before kicking her down the cliff again. The Queen crashes against a big rock and finally dies. The next day, newscasts all over the world report an explosion in Russia that killed a bunch of aliens, and the government tries to take credit for it. Dan returns home and reunites with his family, finally allowing James to meet his granddaughter. Now they can all work together for a better future. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks.